We're living in disorientating times. As churches, we've always worked hard to overcome social isolation, to overcome loneliness, to bring communities and people together. And now we must encourage people to keep apart. There is a profound sense of exile in all this, and so it is that we can turn to the Scriptures for strength, because the Israelites, with their profound sense of place and of the centrality of the temple, had to work out how to worship when the temple had been destroyed and they were distanced and isolated from all that was familiar. How long could we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Asks the psalmist. And Daniel was an exile. He lived in Babylon, and he gives us a glimpse of how the home became the place of prayer and worship. In Daniel chapter 6, we read how Daniel continued to go to the house, which had its windows overlooking Jerusalem, and to get down on his knees 3 times a day and pray to his God, and to praise him as he had done previously. And as we think of Daniel, we can learn much from our Jewish friends and neighbours today. For our Jewish friends, the home and the family meal table is as much a place of worship and prayer as the synagogue. And one encouraging thing we know about the exile in the Old Testament is that it was a time of profound spiritual renewal. It was the time when God's people went back to their founding stories. It was the time when much of the Old Testament as we currently have it took final shape. And when eventually they returned to the Promised Land, they lived differently. They left behind the worship of idols, and they returned single-heartedly to worship God, but in a different way. And so my prayer for each local church is that we may use this time of exile to rethink how we are church for a new generation. The world is changing faster than we ever knew. Naturalists tell us that the survival of any species depends on its ability to adapt and change more quickly than the environment around it. And the same is true of that living organism, which is the Church of God. If we simply focus on restarting everything the way it was before, then the painful experience of exile will have been wasted. So may God give each of us grace to live hopefully in this time of enforced exile, to hear his voice, that we might return from exile changed people, ready to do church differently, that we might reach a changed community with the unchanging gospel of Christ.